Hello, my name is Maria Bezubova and you're at my channel Fertilizers Jazz. Here we talk about events, trends, technologies in the world of fertilizers and agriculture. Please subscribe to the channel, put like to this video, and let's jazz! Today is November 4, 2024, and it is a weekly markets update. Let's have a look at the news of week 44 and see what are the next trends. As expected, Indian IPL announced urea purchase tender on Monday last week. That will close in a week from now. However, tender terms are quite unusual in two respects. First, it is for shipment only to the ports of West Coast. We remember that last tender ended with 90% shipment confirmed for their East Coast. Second, IPL tendered for a specific amount, for 1 million tons, which is usually not the case. Taking into consideration that India needs around 1.5 million tons, more till the end of the year, according to different analysts' opinions, we might see the next smaller tender either end of this year or very early January next year. The tender hasn't supported the price trend, rather vice versa. High level of uncertainty related to political situation as well as slow demand in Europe that doesn't pick up in usual time this year, and slow demand in Brazil pressure prices down. In Europe, buyers continue to stay on the sidelines waiting for prices to decrease. Weather disasters continue, and last week Spain after France was hit by severe storm. But in Spain the outcome was much more disastrous, unfortunately. As a result, Egyptian suppliers begin to be nervous as their stocks are growing, but no clarity regarding sales later in November is supporting high prices set several weeks ago. The level of 375 FOB Egypt is already realistically tested. In the Black Sea, there was no activity, and prices slipped to the average of around 350 FOB. SOCAR tender announced last week for both bulk and bagged product received no interest. Iranian urea production is another point of uncertainty, as last week government asked producers to reduce output amid gas supply cut. This cut is partially related to the geopolitical instability, as well as households' demand, which starts increasing with low temperatures ahead. Depending on how significant production loss will be, the market might reverse to bullish sentiment again soon. The last sales of Iranian product happened at $323 FOB. The Middle East producers are the only ones who are kind of chilling with their books full, but even their spot prices dropped by at least $5 to the level around $370 FOB for December. Fresh Indian tender will attract again mostly volumes from this region, so in general producers are in the most safe position at the moment. Prices in US dropped again in line with the international market, to the level of $311 to $15 per short ton NOLA FOB. Domestic demand is slow amid continuing harvest of corn and soybeans, as well as dry weather that delayed urea demand. Demand in Brazil revived a bit, but only at the level of $370 CFR, while suppliers were trying to increase it by $10. However, the demand is still rather limited, which cannot support international price level. Paper values dropped for all benchmarks, reflecting the bearish trend. Egypt FOB dipped the most by $15 in November to the average of $375 and by $17 for December to the average of $372. For January, the average is expected to be even lower at $370 FOB. NOLA FOB showed the least correction to the average of $327 for November, $323 for December, and expected January average is the only one increasing among key benchmarks, $330 FOB. Brazil CFR corrected downwards to $370 for November, remained unchanged at $369 for December, and expected to reach $365 in January. Arab Gulf FOB also dropped significantly despite expectation that it will be the main supply region for the fresh Indian tender. November average decreased to $370, December to $365, and January is expected at level as low as $355. Ammonium sulfate market prices are under pressure in China because demand from Brazil is slowing down. Offers for standard copper-grade material slipped to around $135 to $38 FOB China. In December, it is understood some Chinese caprolactam producers will have maintenance at their plants or operate at reduced capacity. Granular and compacted values are also under pressure, but Chinese compactors reacted with production decrease, which might support the prices from further sliding. In Brazil, latest AmSul sales was heard at high 170s level. There will be more product needed for Brazil for November and December shipment before the purchase window closes. So urea sentiment and general market trend will show the direction for AmSul prices. Taking into account volatility in the urea market, future trend for AmSul price is also unclear. If urea bearish trend continues, it might also drag AmSul prices down in December. However, from the other hand, a lower price of AmSul might attract large buyers like Turkey, for example, and stimulate to prioritize AmSul versus urea in spring. Market expected some buying interest for nitrates would evolve for Europe by now, but it seems to be very slow, and buying seems to be getting later and later. Perhaps buyers just keep holding out for as long as possible, in the hope that prices for fertilizers in general will ease. Producers are reducing production rates to adjust lower demand, especially since cost of operating is going up. In UAN, market activity is minimal. Ammonia market supply slowly begins to balance both west and east of Suez, with limited spot activity happened last week. Sorfert will restart one of its lines, and also Ma'aden has restarted a week ago, so more volumes will be available soon in both hemispheres. Prices across the regions are stable versus a week ago. Last week in the US, the Tampa ammonia contract price between Yara and Mosaic has concluded for November at $560 CFR. The price is a rollover from October, no major surprise here. In phosphates, there were two major news last week. First, Ethiopian EIBC closed its DAP tender and received proposals for 1,016,000 tons. Totally 7 suppliers proposed volumes from China, major amount, 775,000 tons or 76% of total proposed. From Russia, 195,000 tons, and one cargo from Saudi Arabia, 65,000 tons. The amount confirmed by EIBC will give the market understanding how much Chinese volumes will be available in the upcoming months in the international market, and thus give direction to the price trend. The second news is related to finalization of the contract price for phosphoric acid for Q4 between Indian Coromandel and Jordanian GPMC. The price confirmed the rumors that were circulating during past 2 months. It is up by $110 and will make $1,060 per ton CFR India. Such high price will hit Indian domestic DAP producers, of course. With such level and current ammonia price at $460 CFR, the cost of produced DAP will be around $65 higher versus price level basis maximum retail price and subsidy. At the same time, producers which operate with phosphate rock and sulfur make margin of about $45 per ton. Thus, India will need to rely more on imported DAP and DAP produced by the second method in order to build stocks needed in the rest of Q4 and beginning of 2025. Other than that, spot activity was limited last week. Indian purchases were slow due to approaching Diwali holidays. Brazil buying was also almost non-existing. The price level remained the same, 635 CFR for MAP. Moving to the fundamentals. In general, international commodity markets are in turmoil due to rising tensions in the Middle East. Crude Brent price dropped to almost $70 per barrel after Israeli limited response to Iran that hasn't targeted Iranian oil-producing or transportation facilities. However, at the end of last week, Brent price climbed again to the level of $73, amid Iranian announcement of new response to the Israeli response, which keeps the degree of confrontation very high. So most likely we will see more speculations in closest future until the new balance of powers will be found. Of course, this week all eyes are at the US, at the presidential elections, which indeed will have a major impact at the global security situation and thus at market dynamics. European natural gas futures dropped below 39 euros per megawatt hour, holding the sharp decline from the 11-month high a week ago. Reports circulate that European utilities and buyers are approaching a deal with Azerbaijan to keep Russian gas flowing into Europe after current agreement with Ukrainian pipelines ends at the end of the year. This will secure supplies in the near term and reduce concerns of more dependency on LNG imports. In the meantime, unusually mild weather as the European winter approaches kept demand for gas-intense heating at seasonally lower levels. This allowed the continent's storage capacity to remain near 95% full ahead of the winter. US natural gas futures fell to below $2.75 per MMBtu, declining sharply from the over 4-month high a week ago, due to, first of all, decreasing supply risks from the Middle East. Also, production data shows that in late October, US production rose to more than 100 billion cubic feet per day, near record highs. This was in line with the ample increase in reserves during the fourth week of the month. In the meantime, expectations of more moderate cold weather in the lower 48 states limited demand for gas-intense heating, also pressuring prices. Agricultural commodities future prices were all in red again last week. Wheat futures slipped to $5.67 per bushel on Friday, amid healthy rains in both US key regions and Russia. However, poor conditions of the US winter wheat limited the decline. Also, the exporters are eagerly waiting updates for Australian and Argentinian crops to help determine future direction. Russian export volume estimates were revised downwards last week by 1.7 million tons due to increased export taxes and the restriction on export of Russian wheat by so-called foreign intermediaries. But despite this news, Russian wheat export prices are declining. Corn futures decreased just marginally to the level of $4.15 per bushel. As analytics say, corn has found moderate stability given positive export and corn for ethanol interest. Earlier last week, the Energy Information Administration reported a fall in ethanol stockpiles, along with consistently high average daily production. Weekly export sales were also supportive, above 2 million metric tons. Soybean futures dipped by 4 cents to $9.83 per bushel. Any previous enthusiasm evaporated closer to the weekend, ahead of an expected uncertain start to November. As market analysts said, corn and soybean tried to rally on the strong exports, but they were widely known and the effect was already absorbed earlier. Volatile market conditions are expected next week as the US presidential election occurs, and the market absorbs what changes are coming. On top of that, very good weather in South America caps any price rallies at the moment. Moving to the shipping industry. Containerized freight index increased by almost 130 points for the first time since beginning of July. Spot rates ex-China climbed significantly, mainly for European destinations, which is related to the Christmas rush. Market analysts were doubtful if and when the downward trend will reverse this year. However, later than usual it did. The Baltic Exchange Dry Index dipped more last week to the level seen only in January this year. Activity was sluggish across segments and basins. The general subdued activity in Capesize segment was further compounded by disruptions at Chinese ports due to adverse weather. Holidays both in Europe and China slowed the pace of the week even more across segments. Only in Handysize segment there was at least some visible activity across both basins. To sum up, bearish sentiment in the urea and broader in the nitrogen market dominates despite the fresh Indian tender for 1 million tons finally announced last week. Slow demand in key regions due to objective factors like unsupportive weather circumstances, spike in prices during past months, and thus decreasing affordability for the end consumers, don't give much faith that this trend will reverse in the rest of Q4. Phosphate demand in India will need to be supplied mostly via imports and domestic production based on phosphate rock and sulfur technology. Because phosphoric acid contract price fixed for Q4 by Indian importer and GPMC leaves producers with negative margin about $65 per ton. Global political turmoil adds volatility to all commodity markets. Gas future prices cooled down after a spike driven by tensions in the Middle East. Agricultural commodities future prices continue decreasing amid improving weather conditions in key producing regions. So let's see what is next around the corner. But it will be already next week. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, put like to this video, push the bell in order not to miss any updates, and see you soon.